It is 05:08 in the morning, the Indian Ocean. The water is black and completely calm. The stars are out. 19 nautical miles off the coast of Gala, Sri Lanka, an Iranian warship is sailing alone through the dark. No threats on radar, no escorts, no danger visible. The ship's crew has just come back from a friendly naval exercise in India. They've had parades, faux ops. They shook hands with sailors from dozens of countries. They are 2,000 miles from home. And right now at 05:08 in the morning, they think they are safe. They are not. Because 3 to 4 kilometers away, completely invisible, completely silent, something is already watching them. Something that has been tracking them for hours. Something that is now lining up the perfect shot. At 05:10, a single torpedo leaves the tube. It is the last thing the Iris Dina ever sees. The ship sinks in under 3 minutes. And just like that, for the first time since World War II, a United States Navy submarine has killed an enemy warship. That's what we're breaking down today. Every detail, every decision, every moment. Let's go. To understand why this happened, we need to go back exactly 4 days before that torpedo was fired. February 28, 2026, 01:15 local time. The United States and Israel jointly launched Operation Epic Fury, the largest combined military operation in the Middle East in modern history. Within the first 48 hours alone, 1,250 targets inside Iran were struck. B-2 stealth bombers, B-1B Lancers, F-35s. The full force of American air power came down at once. 49 senior Iranian military and political leaders were eliminated. Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader, gone. But the strikes were not only in the sky. Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, said it clearly at the Pentagon briefing. The first shooters at sea were Tomahawks unleashed by the United States Navy, which closed in on Iranian naval forces and began to conduct strikes across the southern flank. Iran's naval infrastructure was a primary target from hour one. At Bandar Abbas, Iran's biggest naval base, satellite imagery captured ships on fire at the pier. The Iris Shahid Bagheri, a converted container ship turned drone carrier, was hit within the first few hours. The Iris Makran, Iran's forward basing ship, was struck while still docked. Frigates from the Bayandor, Alvan, and Jamaran classes all hit. CENTCOM confirmed it publicly. 2 days ago, the Iranian regime had 11 ships in the Gulf of Oman. Today, they have 0. Think about what that sentence means. In 48 hours, Iran's entire eastern naval presence was erased. But here's the thing. One ship wasn't in the Gulf of Oman. One ship wasn't near any of those bases. One ship had been thousands of miles away in India doing a completely different thing. And that ship was now heading home slowly through the Indian Ocean. That ship was the Iris Dina. The Iris Dina was not a small boat. This was not some patrol vessel or a speedboat. She was a Mauj-class frigate, the most advanced class of warship Iran builds domestically. Commissioned in 2021, she was one of the newest vessels in the entire Iranian Navy. She belonged to Iran's Southern Fleet, the unit responsible for patrolling the Strait of Hormuz and the Gulf of Oman. Displacement, 1,500 tons. Length, 95 meters. Speed, 30 knots. Armament, surface-to-air missiles, anti-ship missiles, torpedoes, and heavy deck guns. She could fight. She was built to fight. In February 2026, the Iris Dina sailed from Iran all the way to Visakhapatnam, India, a distance of over 2,000 miles, to participate in the International Fleet Review 2026 and Exercise Milan, one of India's biggest multilateral naval events. 74 countries sent representatives. 18 warships attended. Even the United States Navy sent a P-8A Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft to participate. The Iranian sailors marched in the parade along the waterfront. They took photographs. They trained alongside ships from countries that technically consider them an adversary. It was almost diplomatic. Somewhere in the Pentagon, someone was definitely watching that parade through a satellite and taking very detailed notes. The sea phase of Milan concluded on February 25, 2026. Iris Dina departed Visakhapatnam. On February 26, Iran's embassy in Sri Lanka formally requested a goodwill port visit to Colombo, scheduled for March 9. That was the plan. A leisurely sail from India to Sri Lanka, visit some ports, show the flag, then head home. But then February 28 happened. Operation Epic Fury began, and everything changed instantly. Sri Lanka told Iran, no warship docking unless it's an emergency. The region was at war. Sri Lanka wanted no part of it. But the Iris Dina kept sailing toward Sri Lanka anyway, her captain apparently still hoping to find a port, still hoping the rules might change. For 5 more days, March 1, March 2, March 3, she continued her approach. She was sailing directly into the crosshairs, and she either didn't know it or she underestimated what was waiting below the surface. That was a big mistake. The US Navy doesn't talk much about where its submarines are. That's kind of the whole point. But we now know, from confirmed defense reports and official documentation, that the submarine responsible for hunting and killing the Iris Dina was the USS Charlotte, a Los Angeles-class nuclear-powered fast attack submarine. Los Angeles class, SSN 688 series. These boats have been the backbone of America's undersea warfare since the 1970s, still among the most lethal submarines in the world today. Length, 110 meters. Displacement, 6,900 tons submerged. Speed, over 25 knots underwater. Power source, 1 nuclear reactor, no need to surface for fuel, ever. She carries Tomahawk cruise missiles for land attack and Mk-48 ADCAP heavyweight torpedoes for exactly this kind of mission. Now the Mk-48 ADCAP. This is the weapon that ended the Iris Dina. Length, 5.8 meters, just under 19 feet. Diameter, 53 centimeters. Weight, 1,558 kilograms. Speed, over 55 knots, that is 102 kilometers per hour underwater chasing a ship. Range, over 44,000 yards. Warhead, 650 pounds of high explosive, 295 kilograms. Wire-guided and acoustic homing, meaning once it's in the water, it hunts. Cost, approximately $4.2 million per torpedo, according to FY 2025 Pentagon budget documents. 1 torpedo, $4.2 million. 1 guided, self-homing underwater missile that moves at 102 kilometers per hour and carries a warhead that can snap a 1,500-ton warship in half. At $4.2 million a shot, that is the most expensive thing Iran has encountered since their last electricity bill. Now here is what analysts believe happened in the days before March 4. The USS Charlotte was given a tracking assignment. The Iris Dina, a fully armed warship of an enemy nation, was transiting the Indian Ocean during an active war. Carl Schuster, a retired U.S. Navy captain and former director of U.S. Pacific Command's Joint Intelligence Center, explained the logic clearly. Given Iran's continuing attacks on any U.S.-friendly country it can reach, it is very possible, indeed likely, that the frigate was positioned to strike mercantile shipping, either flagged to a U.S.-friendly country or carrying cargo for one. This sinking can be justified as a preventive measure. That is the professional military read. Iran's navy wasn't just sailing home. It was an armed combatant in a war zone 2,000 miles from Iran's shores, but still dangerous. The USS Charlotte followed orders. She tracked, she waited, she positioned, and then she fired. 04:30 hours, March 4, 2026. The Indian Ocean is pitch dark. The Iris Dina is making way at moderate speed, approximately 19 nautical miles off the coast of Gala, Sri Lanka. Her crew is on routine watch. No enemy ships are visible on the surface. No radar contacts are closing in. What they cannot see and cannot detect is the USS Charlotte sitting silently below the surface, 3 to 4 kilometers away. The Pentagon later released periscope footage of what comes next. 05:08 hours. The USS Charlotte fires. 2 Mk-48 ADCAP torpedoes enter the water. Wire-guided, acoustic homing, racing at 55 knots through the dark ocean. One of them locks onto the heat signature and propeller noise of the Iris Dina. The torpedo hits the stern of the ship. The periscope video shows it clearly. A massive explosion erupts from the rear of the frigate. A fireball rises. Then the ship begins to list. Reports indicate that U.S. forces had warned the Irisdina twice before firing, telling the crew to abandon ship. Whether those warnings were received or acted upon in time is unclear. The ship was carrying approximately 180 people, according to Sri Lanka's foreign minister. Iranian Foreign Minister Aragchi later said 130 sailors were aboard. 5:10 hours. The Irisdina issues a distress signal. It is picked up by Sri Lanka's Maritime Rescue Coordination Center in Colombo. Naval analysts noted, it's a miracle they even managed to send an SOS, because the ship sank in under 2 to 3 minutes. 2 to 3 minutes, that's all it took. From torpedo impact to the sea closing over the Irisdina, less time than it takes to read a single page. Sri Lanka Navy vessels and aircraft rushed to the coordinates. They found bodies, they found debris, and among it all, only 32 survivors. 87 bodies were recovered. At least 61 sailors remained missing, presumed lost to the sea. For Iran, this was not just a military loss. This was a catastrophe. The Irisdina, one of their best, newest warships, was gone. Not from a bomb, not from a missile. From a single torpedo fired from a submarine they never saw in waters they thought were safe. March 4, 2026, morning. The Pentagon briefing room. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth steps up to the podium alongside General Kane. The room is packed with journalists. Hegseth's words are precise, almost poetic in how blunt they are. Yesterday, in the Indian Ocean, an American submarine sunk an Iranian warship that thought it was safe in international waters. Instead, it was sunk by a torpedo. Quiet death. The first sinking of an enemy ship by a torpedo since World War II. Quiet death. 2 words. That's how the U.S. Secretary of Defense describes the end of a 1,500-ton warship and the lives of over 100 Iranian sailors. Ice-cold delivery. Gen Kane went further with the historical frame. For the first time since 1945, a United States Navy fast attack submarine has sunk an enemy combatant ship using a single Mk-48 torpedo to achieve immediate effect, sending the warship to the bottom of the sea. And then Kane added something that no one in that room missed. This is an incredible demonstration of America's global reach. To hunt, find, and kill an out-of-area deployer is something that only the United States can do at this type of scale. Think about what out-of-area deployer means. The Irisdina was 2,000 miles from Iran. She was in the Indian Ocean, near Sri Lanka. She thought distance was protection. Distance is not protection from a U.S. nuclear submarine. Gen Kane also confirmed the broader picture. The U.S. had, at that point, hit over 2,000 targets across Iran and destroyed more than 20 Iranian naval vessels. The campaign, he said, had effectively neutralized, at this point in time, Iran's major naval presence in theater. Iran's entire navy, neutralized, in under a week. But Iran's response was not silence. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi identified the sunken ship publicly. He went on record calling the attack an atrocity at sea. And then he said something that deserves full attention. Mark my words, the U.S. will come to bitterly regret the precedent it has set. That is not diplomacy. That is a threat. From a foreign minister whose country has just lost over 100 sailors in international waters, 2,000 miles from home. From Iran's perspective, and we have to understand their angle here, this felt deeply unfair. The Irisdina was not in the Persian Gulf. She was not directly threatening any American ship or base. She had just come from a peaceful multinational naval exercise in India, sailed alongside ships from dozens of countries, and was trying to return home. In Iran's version of events, she was basically just a tourist. A 1,500-ton, missile-armed tourist. But here is the reality of modern naval warfare. In a declared state of conflict, an armed warship of an enemy nation is a legitimate military target regardless of where it is. Araghchi's claim that Iran's frigate was unarmed because her weapon systems were reportedly in storage configuration during the Goodwill exercise. That argument carries zero legal weight once your country is at war and your ship is back in international waters. Alessio Padolano, professor of war and strategy at King's College London, put it perfectly. ASW anti-submarine warfare should be taken absolutely seriously at one's peril. Translation: if you bring a warship to a war, you should expect war. The Indian government found itself in an uncomfortable position too. India's Milan exercise had, in good faith, hosted the Iris Dina alongside ships from dozens of countries, including American-aligned nations. The torpedo strike happened just 7 days after the exercise ended. New Delhi was carefully silent, processing the diplomatic damage from having unknowingly provided a temporary safe haven to a warship that the US would hunt down days later. But the war moved on. Every hour more strikes, more targets. The Strait of Hormuz still closed. Over 150 tankers stranded. Oil prices climbing past $100 per barrel. The full weight of American military power was reshaping the Middle East in real time. And somewhere in the deep water of the Indian Ocean, the USS Charlotte was already gone, silent, invisible, moving to the next mission. Now let's put this in full historical context, because this matters more than most people realize. August 14, 1945, Japan, the final day of World War II. The USS Torsk, a Tench-class submarine, torpedoed and sank a Japanese frigate in the Sea of Japan. It was the last confirmed torpedo kill by a U.S. Navy submarine before March 4, 2026. That is 81 years of silence. 81 years in which U.S. submarines existed, trained, deployed, and were feared across the world, but never once put a torpedo through an enemy combatant. Not in Korea, not in Vietnam, not in the Gulf War, not in Iraq or Afghanistan. Not during any of the dozens of naval standoffs with Iran, North Korea, Russia, or China over 8 decades. 81 years. And then in international waters off Sri Lanka in 2026, the silence ended. The last time a submarine sank a surface warship before March 4, 2026 was May 2, 1982, the Falklands War. British Royal Navy submarine HMS Conqueror sank the Argentine cruiser Ara General Belgrano with 2 Mk-8 torpedoes, killing 323 Argentine sailors. Between the Belgrano in 1982 and Iris Dina in 2026, 44 years with no submarine versus warship kills anywhere on the planet Earth. Now there is one. And here is what makes it strategically terrifying for every other Navy watching this. The USS Charlotte didn't just sink a ship. She demonstrated that America's submarine force will track, follow, and kill an enemy warship anywhere on the planet, Indian Ocean, Pacific, Atlantic, doesn't matter, in the middle of the night, without a single surface ship involved, without any warning on the target's radar, without giving the enemy any meaningful chance to respond. Iran's Navy, which before February 28 included frigates, corvettes, submarines, drone carriers, a forward basing ship, and thousands of sea mines, is now largely gone. 17 warships sunk. Bandar Abbas base destroyed. The converted drone carrier Iris Shahid Bagheri hit. The basing ship Iris Makran hit. Kilo-class submarines targeted at their piers. 11 ships in the Gulf of Oman before the operation began, 0 remaining in 48 hours. The Iris Dina was the final act. The one ship that tried to survive by being far away. It didn't work. Here is what I want you to take away from all of this. The Iris Dina left India on February 25, 2026 as a warship in peacetime. By the time she was 19 miles off the coast of Sri Lanka on March 4, she was a warship in an active war zone, completely alone, with no air cover, no escort, no idea that 3 kilometers away, a Los Angeles-class submarine was already lining up the shot. The crew thought distance was safety. The ocean was wide. Sri Lanka was close. Home wasn't far. But a Mk-48 ADCAP torpedo doesn't care about distance. It doesn't care about history. It doesn't care that your sailors marched in a parade 2 weeks ago. It moves at 102 kilometers per hour. It carries 295 kilograms of high explosive. and it guided itself straight into the stern of the Iris Dina at 05:08 on a Tuesday morning, and the ship was gone in under 3 minutes. Pete Hegseth called it a quiet death. For 87 families in Iran, there was nothing quiet about it. And for every military analyst, every Navy commander, and every government watching this war from a distance, the message landed louder than the explosion itself. America's submarine force is not a deterrent. It is not a threat. It is a promise. Challenge it. That's not a mistake you get to make twice. This was Battle Sphere. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.